Marcus Blackwood, the ruthless CEO of Blackwood Industries, has built his empire through fear and intimidation. Known for making grown executives cry and destroying careers with a single glance, he's gone through 17 secretaries in 2 years. When 28-year-old Sofia Martinez walks into his corner office on the 47th floor of Manhattan's most imposing skyscraper, she brings something no one expected: complete fearlessness. What starts as a battle of wills between an unstoppable force and an immovable object becomes a story of two damaged souls finding redemption in the most unlikely place. Before we begin, tell us, what city or country are you watching from? It's always incredible to know how far these stories reach. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, revealing the 47th floor of Blackwood Tower. Sofia Martinez stepped out, her heels clicking against the pristine marble floor, with a confidence that seemed to echo through the eerily quiet executive level. She carried nothing but a simple black purse and a folder containing her credentials. No fear, no trembling hands, no second thoughts. "You must be the new sacrifice," came a bitter voice from behind the receptionist's desk. Janet, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and worry lines etched deep around her eyes, looked up from her computer with the expression of someone who'd witnessed too many casualties. "I'm Janet Morrison, executive assistant to Mr. Blackwood. Or rather, I was until you showed up." Sofia set her purse down and extended her hand. "Sofia Martinez. And I prefer to think of myself as the new solution." Janet's laugh was hollow as she shook Sofia's hand. "Honey, you seem nice, and that's exactly why you won't last. The nice ones never do. Marcus Blackwood doesn't just fire people, he destroys them. I've seen grown men leave his office in tears, and I've watched brilliant women question their worth after just one meeting with him." "How long have you worked here?" Sofia asked, settling into the chair across from Janet's desk. 12 years. Started when Marcus was just vice president under his father. Back then, he was demanding but fair. Then his father died in that car accident 3 years ago, and something in Marcus broke. Janet's voice dropped to a whisper. The board wanted to replace him, said he was too unstable, too cruel. So he doubled down, became even more ruthless to prove he belonged in that chair. Now he's turned this company into his personal war zone. The phone on Janet's desk rang with a sharp, aggressive tone that made both women jump. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood," Janet answered, her voice immediately shifting to a professional monotone. "Where is she?" The voice that came through the speaker was deep, cold, and carried the kind of authority that could silence a room. Sofia could hear the impatience crackling through the phone line. "She's here, sir. Shall I?" "Send her in, now." The line went dead. Janet stood up, her movement stiff with tension. "He's waiting. Office is through those double doors. Whatever you do, don't take anything he says personally. He's going to try to break you down in the first 5 minutes. It's what he does." Sofia rose from her chair, smoothing down her navy blue blazer. "Janet?" "Yes?" "What happened to the last secretary?" Janet's face darkened. "Rebecca Chen, Harvard MBA, worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies. Lasted exactly 4 days. She called me last week from a therapist's office crying, asking if she'd ever be good enough for any job after what Marcus did to her confidence." Sofia nodded, filing away the information. She walked toward the imposing double doors, each step measured and deliberate. The nameplate read, "Marcus Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer," in understated gold letters that somehow managed to look threatening. She knocked twice, firm, respectful, but not submissive. "Enter." The office was a study in power and intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan, while dark mahogany furniture and black leather created an atmosphere that felt more like a judge's chambers than a corporate office. Behind an enormous desk sat Marcus Blackwood, and Sofia understood immediately why grown executives feared him. He was tall, even sitting down, with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal gray suit perfectly. His dark hair was styled with military precision, and his jaw looked like it had been carved from granite. But it was his eyes that held the real threat. Steel gray and completely devoid of warmth, they studied Sofia with the calculating intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "Sofia Martinez," he said, not looking up from the file spread across his desk. 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern. Previous experience includes executive assistant positions at Morrison & Associates, Hartwell Legal Group, and most recently, Pinnacle Consulting. He finally raised his eyes to meet hers. Impressive resume for someone who's about to fail spectacularly. Sofia remained standing, her posture straight. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood. I'm here to discuss how I can best support your objectives and contribute to Blackwood Industries' continued success. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Support my objectives? Let me be clear about something, Miss Martinez. I don't need support. I need someone who can follow simple instructions without falling apart when I raise my voice or question their competence. Based on my experience with your 17 predecessors, that person doesn't exist. Perhaps you haven't found the right person yet, Sophia replied, her tone remaining perfectly professional. Oh, is that what you think? Marcus stood up, his full height of 6'3" casting a shadow across the desk. Do you know why my last secretary quit? According to my research, Rebecca Chen resigned after 4 days, citing irreconcilable differences in working styles. Marcus walked around the desk, each step deliberate and menacing. Rebecca Chen quit because I told her that her organizational system was so pathetically inadequate that even a high school intern could do better. She cried for 20 minutes in the bathroom before packing her things. He stopped directly in front of Sophia, invading her personal space. I don't coddle feelings, Miss Martinez. I don't provide emotional support or gentle encouragement. I demand excellence, and when I don't get it, I make my disappointment very clear. Sophia looked up at him without flinching. Mr. Blackwood, if your goal is to intimidate me into quitting before I even start, you're going to be disappointed. I didn't come here looking for a mentor or a friend. I came here to do a job, and I do my job very well. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or maybe annoyance that his usual tactics weren't working. We'll see about that. Your first task is to reorganize my calendar for the next month, reschedule 3 board meetings, and prepare detailed briefs on our top 5 clients. I need it all done by tomorrow morning, and it needs to be perfect. One mistake, one oversight, one moment of confusion, and you'll be joining the unemployment line with the rest of them. Understood, Sophia said simply. Marcus returned to his desk, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Janet will show you to your workspace. Try not to disappoint me, Miss Martinez. I'm running out of patience for incompetence. As Sophia reached the door, she paused and turned back. Mr. Blackwood? He looked up, irritation flashing across his face. What? I won't disappoint you, but I also won't be your emotional punching bag. If we're going to work together, we'll do it with mutual respect. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Shock, anger, or perhaps something else entirely. For a moment, the mask of cold authority slipped, revealing something raw and almost vulnerable underneath. Then the moment passed, and his features hardened again. Get out of my office, Miss Martinez, and pray that your work speaks louder than your mouth. Sophia nodded once and walked out, closing the door behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded like a declaration of war. Sophia's workspace was positioned directly outside Marcus's office, a strategic placement that felt more like being stationed at the gates of hell than holding a prestigious executive position. The mahogany desk was immaculate, equipped with dual monitors, a high-end phone system, and filing cabinets that looked like they hadn't been properly organized in months. Janet hovered nearby, wringing her hands. I'm supposed to train you for the next 2 hours before I officially hand over my duties, but honestly, Sophia, I don't know where to begin. Marcus changes his mind constantly. He expects you to read his thoughts, and he has zero tolerance for questions. Show me the calendar system first, Sophia said, settling into the leather chair and immediately pulling up Marcus's schedule on her computer. What she saw made her stomach drop. The next month was a disaster. Double-booked meetings, conflicting time zones for international calls, and client appointments scheduled during board meetings. It wasn't just disorganized, it was professionally catastrophic. My God, Sophia whispered, scrolling through week after week of chaos. How has he been functioning with this mess? He hasn't, Janet admitted. That's why he's been so impossible lately. He missed the Hartwell Industries merger meeting last week because I accidentally scheduled it during his quarterly review with the board. He screamed at me for 20 minutes, then made me call Hartwell to grovel for another appointment. Janet's voice cracked slightly. They refused. We lost a $40 million deal because of my mistake. Sophia studied the screen, her mind already working through solutions. Janet, this isn't your fault. This system is fundamentally broken. Look, he's got a breakfast meeting in Midtown at 8 a.m. and a 9 a.m. conference call with Tokyo. Even with Manhattan traffic being light, that's impossible. I told him that, Janet said defensively. He said to make it work or find a new job. The phone rang and Janet immediately tensed. Sophia reached for it instead. Mr. Blackwood's office, Sophia Martinez speaking. "This is David Chen from Peterson and Associates." The voice was crisp, professional, and clearly annoyed. "I've been trying to reach Marcus for 3 weeks about the Riverside project. Our client is threatening to pull out if we don't get confirmation on the timeline by end of business today." Sophia pulled up the Riverside file on her computer while keeping her voice calm and composed. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for the delay. Mr. Blackwood has been dealing with some urgent international matters, but the Riverside project remains a top priority. Can you give me 30 minutes to review the file and get you a definitive answer?" "You can actually do that?" David sounded genuinely surprised. "The previous assistant told me it would take at least a week to get Marcus to review anything." 30 minutes, Sophia confirmed, already making notes. "You have my word." She hung up and immediately began pulling up the Riverside project files, cross-referencing them with Marcus's calendar and the company's current capacity reports. Janet watched in amazement as Sophia worked with surgical precision, organizing information that had been scattered across multiple systems. "How are you doing that so quickly?" Janet asked. "Experience," Sophia replied, not looking up from her screen, "and a healthy respect for other people's time." 20 minutes later, Sophia had a complete analysis of the Riverside project, including timeline projections, resource allocation, and 3 different strategic approaches. She knocked on Marcus's door. "What?" His voice was sharp with irritation. "David Chen from Peterson and Associates called about the Riverside project. Their client needs confirmation on the timeline by 5 p.m. today, or they're pulling out." Marcus looked up from his computer, his expression darkening. "And you're telling me this? Why? Handle it?" "I need your approval on the approach," Sophia said, stepping forward and placing a detailed report on his desk. "I've analyzed 3 options based on our current capacity and the client's requirements. Option 1 delivers in 8 weeks with maximum profit margin, Option 2 delivers in 6 weeks with moderate profit, and Option 3 delivers in 4 weeks, but requires overtime authorization." Marcus stared at the report, then at Sophia. For a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped, revealing genuine surprise. He picked up the document and began reading, his eyes scanning the detailed analysis with growing attention. "You did this in 20 minutes?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual edge. 18 minutes, actually. The remaining 2 minutes were spent confirming the client's specific requirements with Mr. Chen. Marcus continued reading, and Sophia noticed the subtle changes in his expression, the slight relaxation of his jaw, the way his shoulders dropped almost imperceptibly. This was a man who appreciated competence, even if he had a twisted way of expressing it. "Option 2, he said finally. 6 weeks, moderate profit. We maintain quality without overextending our teams. I'll call Mr. Chen immediately and send him the detailed proposal within the hour." As Sophia turned to leave, Marcus spoke again. "Miss Martinez." She paused at the door. "Yes, sir? The calendar situation you inherited. It's unacceptable. I'm aware. I'll have it completely reorganized by tomorrow morning as requested. You have until 6 p.m. today." Sophia felt the challenge in his words, the test embedded in the impossible deadline. Around her, she could practically feel Janet holding her breath, waiting for Sophia to crumble under the pressure like so many others had. Instead, Sophia nodded calmly. "Understood. Will there be anything else?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating grey eyes. "You realize I just cut your deadline in half?" "Yes, sir. You also just gave me the opportunity to prove that I can handle whatever challenges this position requires." Something shifted in the air between them. Not quite respect, but perhaps the recognition of a worthy opponent. Marcus's lips curved into what might have been the ghost of a smile. Though it disappeared so quickly, Sophia couldn't be sure it had been there at all. "We'll see, Miss Martinez. We'll see." Sophia returned to her desk with renewed determination. Janet was packing the last of her personal items into a cardboard box, her movements heavy with resignation. "Sophia," Janet said quietly, "I need to tell you something about Marcus. 3 years ago, before his father died, he was different. Demanding, yes, but fair. He laughed sometimes, remembered birthdays, asked about people's families." She zipped up her purse and looked toward Marcus's closed office door. "The man in there now isn't the real Marcus Blackwood. He's what's left after grief and pressure and loneliness carved away everything soft and human." "What are you saying?" Sophia asked. Janet shouldered her purse and picked up the box. "I'm saying maybe he doesn't need another person to fear him. Maybe he needs someone brave enough to see past the monster he's become." With that, Janet walked toward the elevator, leaving Sophia alone with the impossible task ahead and the growing suspicion that she had just stepped into something far more complex than a simple employer-employee relationship. The clock on her computer showed 2:47 p.m. She had 3 hours and 13 minutes to reorganize a month's worth of chaos. Sophia cracked her knuckles and got to work. At exactly 5:58 p.m., Sophia knocked on Marcus's office door. She held a leather portfolio containing the completely reorganized calendar system, printed copies of all rescheduled meetings with confirmation emails, and a detailed breakdown of how she'd managed to solve what everyone else had considered impossible. "Come in," Marcus called, his voice carrying a note of curiosity that hadn't been there before. Sophia entered to find him standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the Manhattan skyline. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office, and for a moment he looked less like a corporate tyrant and more like a man carrying the weight of the world. "Your calendar, Mr. Blackwood," Sophia said, placing the portfolio on his desk. "Completely reorganized, all conflicts resolved, and every meeting confirmed." Marcus turned around slowly, his grey eyes studying her face for any sign of the exhaustion or stress that should have been there after such an impossible task. Sophia's makeup was still perfect, her blazer unwrinkled, and her expression calm and professional. "You're either extremely competent or extremely foolish," he said, walking to his desk and opening the portfolio. "Let's see which one." As Marcus reviewed her work, Sophia watched his expressions change. The skeptical frown gradually gave way to focused attention, then to something that looked suspiciously like admiration. He flipped through page after page of meticulously organized schedules, cross-referenced with client priorities and strategic importance. "You moved the Yamamoto Industries meeting," he observed, not looking up from the documents. "Yes, sir. Mr. Yamamoto's assistant informed me that Tuesday mornings are preferable due to the time difference, and it aligns better with their fiscal reporting schedule. The move also freed up Thursday afternoon for your quarterly review with the board, which I noticed had been postponed twice." Marcus continued reading, and Sophia could practically see his analytical mind processing every change, every decision, every improvement she'd made. After several minutes of silence, he closed the portfolio and leaned back in his chair. "How?" he asked simply. "I'm sorry? How did you do this?" "Janet worked on this calendar for 6 months and couldn't make sense of it. 3 assistants before her tried and failed, yet you walk in here and solve it in 3 hours. Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Because I didn't try to work within a broken system, Mr. Blackwood. I started over." "Explain." "Your previous assistants were trying to patch problems instead of addressing the root cause. The issue wasn't incompetence, it was infrastructure. Your calendar system wasn't designed for the volume and complexity of your current position, so I rebuilt it from scratch, integrated it with your client database, and created automated protocols that will prevent future conflicts." Marcus stood up and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of her. This time, though, his proximity felt different, less intimidating, more searching. "You realize you've just made yourself indispensable," he said quietly. "That wasn't my intention," Sophia replied. "My intention was to do my job well." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. "Why are you here, Sophia? Really, you could work anywhere with skills like this. Top firms in the city would pay you twice what I'm offering. So why are you standing in my office, fixing my problems, dealing with my—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Dealing with your pain," Sophia finished softly. "If this story is touching you in some way, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Every place has its own struggles, and sometimes it's incredible to see how we all connect through such human stories." The words hung in the air between them, like a bridge neither had expected to build. Marcus's carefully constructed mask faltered, and for just a moment, Sophia glimpsed the man Janet had described, the one who existed before grief had carved away his humanity. "I don't know what you think you see," Marcus said, his voice rough with something that might have been vulnerability, "but I can assure you that you're not in pain," Sophia interrupted gently. "That driving away 17 assistants in 2 years is normal behavior for a successful CEO. That screaming at competent people until they cry is just good business practice." Marcus's jaw tightened, and she could see him rebuilding his defensive walls in real time. "You don't know anything about me or what I've been through." "You're right," Sophia admitted. "I don't know the details, but I know what loss looks like, Marcus. I know what it means to build walls so high that even you can't see over them anymore." The use of his first name seemed to shock him into silence. They stood there separated by less than 3 feet, but divided by years of hurt and mistrust. "Your father," Sophia continued, her voice gentle but firm, "he died 3 years ago in a car accident. You were supposed to take over the company gradually, but instead you were thrown into the deep end while grieving. The board questioned your leadership, so you decided to prove your strength by becoming someone even you don't recognize." Marcus's face had gone pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Stop. You fire assistants not because they're incompetent, but because getting close to people feels dangerous now. Because caring about someone means risking the kind of loss that nearly destroyed you before." I said stop. His voice was low, dangerous, but Sophia could hear the tremor beneath the threat. "The cruelty isn't who you are, Marcus. It's just armor. But armor that's too heavy will eventually crush the person wearing it." Marcus turned away from her abruptly, his breathing uneven. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You think you understand, but you don't. When my father died, I didn't just lose him. I lost everything I thought I knew about myself, about this company, about what it means to lead people." He turned back to face her, and Sophia was startled to see tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. "Do you know what his last words to me were?" Sophia shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Don't let them see you break, son. The moment they see weakness, everything we built falls apart." Marcus laughed bitterly. "So I haven't broken. Not once, not in front of anyone. I've been holding it together with pure will and rage for 3 years, and it's turned me into someone I hate." The confession hung between them like a wounded bird, fragile and desperate. Sophia took a small step closer. "What if," she said carefully, "what if showing strength doesn't mean never breaking? What if it means choosing to heal?" Marcus stared at her for a long moment, and Sophia could see the war being fought behind his eyes, between the man he'd been forced to become and the person he might still be able to be. Finally, he walked back to his desk and sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. "Your work on the calendar," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's exceptional, thank you." Sophia recognized the dismissal, but also the crack in the armor. She nodded and turned toward the door. "Sophia," Marcus called, just as she reached for the handle. "Yes, same time tomorrow." "And Sophia?" He looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his eyes held something other than coldness. "Thank you for not running away." As Sophia closed the door behind her, she realized that somewhere in the span of 8 hours, everything had changed. She wasn't just working for Marcus Blackwood anymore. She was fighting for him. 3 weeks had passed since that pivotal evening in Marcus's office, and the entire atmosphere of the 47th floor had undergone a quiet revolution. Sophia arrived each morning at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before Marcus, and used that time to prepare his day with military precision. Coffee, black, no sugar, served in the ceramic mug he'd inherited from his father. The morning briefing folder containing priority items, urgent decisions, and a carefully curated selection of positive news about the company's performance. But more importantly, Sophia had begun to notice the small things that revealed the man behind the corporate armor. Marcus still arrived at exactly 8 a.m., still wore perfectly tailored suits, and still commanded every room he entered. But the screaming had stopped. The cruel dismissals had disappeared. Instead, Sophia watched him struggle with something far more complex, the tentative emergence of the person he'd buried 3 years ago. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," Sophia said as he passed her desk, just as she had every morning for 21 days. "Sophia," he replied, and she caught the slight hesitation before he added, "Good morning." Such a small thing. Acknowledgement, basic courtesy, but from Marcus Blackwood it felt like a victory. The phone rang as Marcus disappeared into his office. "Mr. Blackwood's office, Sophia Martinez speaking." "Sophia, thank God you're there." The voice belonged to Patricia Winters, the company's head of investor relations. "We have a crisis. The Steinberg Industries deal just fell through. They're citing concerns about Marcus's leadership style. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, and there are rumors that 3 major investors are considering pulling out." Sophia felt her blood run cold. "How bad is it, Patricia?" "Bad enough that some board members are talking about a vote of no confidence. Marcus doesn't know yet. He's been in back-to-back meetings since yesterday." "Sophia, if we lose the Steinberg deal and the investors panic..." Patricia's voice trailed off, but Sophia understood the implication. Marcus's position as CEO would be in jeopardy. "Schedule the emergency board meeting for 2 p.m., Sophia said, her mind already racing through possibilities. "I'll handle informing Mr. Blackwood. Sophia, be careful how you tell him. If he explodes like he used to, if he shows any sign of the old Marcus in front of the board today, it's over. After hanging up, Sophia sat in the quiet of the executive floor, weighing her options. She could deliver the news professionally, maintaining the careful distance they'd established. Or she could do what every instinct told her was right. She could trust the man she'd glimpsed beneath the armor. She knocked on Marcus's office door and entered without waiting for permission. Marcus looked up from his computer, and Sophia was struck by how different he looked. The harsh lines around his eyes had softened slightly, and though he still carried himself with authority, there was less of the coiled tension that had defined him before. "We need to talk," Sophia said, closing the door behind her. Something in her tone made Marcus stand immediately. "What's wrong?" "The Steinberg deal fell through. They cited concerns about your leadership style. The board is calling an emergency meeting for 2 p.m., and Patricia says there's talk of a vote of no confidence." Sophia watched Marcus absorb the news, waiting for the explosion, the rage, the return of the man who destroyed people with his temper. Instead, Marcus walked to his windows and stood there silently for nearly a minute. "My father always said that a company reflects its leader," Marcus said finally, his voice quiet. "If Steinberg pulled out because of my reputation, then I did this to myself." "Marcus," Sophia said, moving to stand beside him at the window, "this isn't over. You've changed. The people in this company have started to see it, even if the outside world hasn't caught up yet. Have I changed?" Marcus turned to look at her, and Sophia saw genuine uncertainty in his eyes. "Or have I just been pretending for the past few weeks?" "Do you remember what you said to David Chen when he called about the Morrison project delay?" Sophia asked. Marcus looked confused. "No, what did I say?" "He was panicking about the timeline, expecting you to scream at him like you would have a month ago. Instead, you told him that delays happen and what matters is how we handle them. You asked about his daughter's surgery and told him to take the time he needed." "I did that. You did that. And do you remember yesterday when Jessica from accounting made that error on the quarterly report?" "She looked terrified," Marcus said slowly. "She was shaking when she came in here." "And what did you do?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, remembering. "I told her everyone makes mistakes. I asked if she needed additional training or resources." "The old Marcus would have fired her on the spot," Sophia said gently. "The man standing here with me now chose compassion instead." Marcus leaned against the window, his reflection ghost-like against the Manhattan skyline. "When my father died, I thought strength meant never showing vulnerability, never admitting mistakes, never letting anyone see that I was drowning." He looked at Sophia with an expression that was raw and honest. "You've shown me that real strength might be the opposite." "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked. "I'm thinking that for the first time in 3 years, I want to fight for this company, not because I have something to prove, but because I actually believe I can lead it." Marcus straightened up, and Sophia could see decision crystallizing in his eyes. "But I can't do it alone." "You don't have to," Sophia said. "What do you need?" Marcus turned to face her fully. "I need you to help me show the board who I really am. Not the angry, broken man I became after my father died, but the leader I'm choosing to be now. Now that you've come this far, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your presence matters, and your story does too." The board meeting at 2 p.m. was unlike anything anyone at Blackwood Industries had ever witnessed. Marcus entered the conference room not with his usual intimidating presence, but with quiet confidence. He acknowledged each board member by name, asked Patricia about her son's college graduation, and thanked the team for their patience during what he called his difficult period. When he addressed the Steinberg situation, Marcus did something revolutionary. He took full responsibility. "I've spent 3 years building a reputation that cost us this deal," he told the 12 board members seated around the polished conference table. "I became someone my father wouldn't recognize, and more importantly, someone I couldn't respect. But with the help of exceptional people like Sophia Martinez and Patricia Winters, I'm working to become the leader this company deserves." The room was silent as Marcus outlined his plan for rebuilding client relationships, implementing new communication protocols, and creating a company culture based on collaboration rather than fear. "I'm asking for your trust," he concluded, "not because of who I was or who my father was, but because of who I'm choosing to be moving forward." The vote of confidence passed 11-1. As the board members filed out, several stopped to shake Marcus's hand, not with the nervous politeness they'd shown before, but with genuine respect. "You did it," Sophia said as they walked back toward Marcus's office. "We did it," Marcus corrected. "Sophia, I need you to know something." They stopped outside his office door, and Sophia waited. 3 weeks ago, I was barely hanging on. I'd convinced myself that being feared was enough, that pushing people away was protecting myself. Marcus looked at her with an expression that held gratitude, respect, and something deeper. You didn't just organize my calendar or fix my problems. You reminded me who I wanted to be. And who is that? Sophia asked softly. Marcus smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, transforming his entire face. Someone worthy of the people who choose to stand beside him. As Sophia watched Marcus enter his office with renewed purpose, she realized that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought in boardrooms or corporate towers. They're fought in the quiet moments when someone chooses healing over hurt, connection over isolation, and hope over fear. The most feared CEO in Manhattan had finally learned that the greatest strength isn't in making people afraid to challenge you. It's in becoming someone they're honored to stand with. 6 months later, Blackwood Industries would post record profits, win 3 major client acquisitions, and be named one of the best places to work by Forbes magazine. But those victories would pale in comparison to the quiet revolution that started with one fearless secretary who dared to see past the monster to find the man worth saving. And Marcus Blackwood? He kept Sophia's business card framed on his desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the most important job we can do is help each other remember who we're meant to be.